Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
All right, welcome everyone. It is the Non-Sequitur Show, and we have a great show for you tonight. We have stuff dealing with science. We all love science, and it's a little bit different from the last show because the last show was just I don't know what to make of it. And it's funny because somebody commented literally after last show, which was a guy named G-Man. They said, "Hey, we need something a little more intellectually speaking." So I had decided to go, "Oh, okay. What can I do to be intellectually speaking?" And I decided to reach out to my dear friend Landon. Oh, you know what? I wasn't supposed to be showing him yet. Go back to your hole, Landon. Go back there. Yeah, go back. I didn't mean to be showing him yet. I wanted to introduce somebody else first. We do have a special guest with us tonight as well. Somebody who hasn't been on for I don't know, a couple weeks or so. Some ugly dude from Florida. He goes by the name of Red something or other. Reds, is that you?
What's up?
Hey, welcome, man.
Another day in paradise. Happy to be here on the Non-Sequitur Show, and happy to be talking with you again, Steve, and also Landon. You lovely, lovely son of a bitch with an outrageously large penis. It's
you can't say the P word on this show. You know how that goes.
Oh, are we already demonetized?
Oh,
wow, that's a world record.
Speaking of lawsuits, my GoFundMe is in the video description. Please feel free to donate to the GoFundMe and leave a comment. Trolls piss off, and I will read that on air. So I was going to call up Landon. He's already with us, but I was going to call him up from the satellite thing. So I was going to go beep 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 beep. Landon, Earth Landon, do you read it, Landon? Landon, come in. Landon, now we've lost Landon. Landon, there, Landon. Can he hear us? Hey, Reds, can you hear us? There he is. Oh, yeah. Hi, yeah. Can you hear us, Landon? I can't hear him. What happened?
Uh-oh. We're off to a great start already.
You can hear us. All we hear is like somebody dropped a wooden box. It was working just fine a few minutes ago. Do you hear that background noise, Reds?
Somewhat, but I can hear him. Landon,
I hear him typing.
If you are in danger, blink twice.
Wave to us if you need rescuing. It says speakers muted and you have no audio. That's on your end on your Skype. You might have need to unmute or something. Because you're good on our end. We can hear you. We can see you. So much for technology, right? This is what happens when you have a technology that is like better, more complicated than the old school way of doing these things.
I don't know why you
test.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Although, in all fairness, I don't know why you chose this platform.
So I hear that.
We can hear you just fine.
And I hear audio remains the same.
You want to exit and try and come back in? Yeah, this is like 2018
I heard you.
YouTube. Oh, you can hear us. Awesome.
I hear you now. Sorry,
awesome.
I apologize. The space link calls are somewhat difficult, but good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone, latitude, and fusion ignition status. How are you folks doing? Good to see you, Steve. Hello there, Reds. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, and by the way, Landon happens to be one of the smartest people on the planet, and if he can't figure out this new software, we're all doomed. We're all screwed, like royally. If he can't solve it, yeah, don't even bother. But anyways, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Before we do, though, I think Landon wanted to do a little update on our last show. No, I'm sorry, the show prior to that, where we had actually an intelligent person on by the name of King Crocker.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear King Crocker. You know, I've actually had the pleasure of meeting him in person, and I can tell you, you know, he lives up to his moniker. I mean, he's aptly named, and an incredibly nice person, but also you know, quite generous with his time. I think it's very honorable the physics that he's involved with in you know, biomedical physics, and some of the patient work is done. But I mean, he's done some excellent work in quantum mechanics. I've read some of his papers. He's done some stuff in nuclear fusion. I mean, we've had sort of similar cross paths. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be on the same show that he was on. You know, there was a question someone asked of who was smarter, and I would have said Crocodile was, but that's sort of my opinion. I'm reminded that Feynman said, never assume you're the smartest person in the room. That way you have a chance to learning something.
So let me get this straight here. Okay, so here's a guy that studied under Feynman, knew, you know, people like Stephen Hawking, knew all the big players. I mean, Landon has been around for a very, very long time. He was one of the originators of the actual internet. Like, he worked on that kind of stuff. And so you're talking about King Crocoduck that you're saying is kind of like smarter, and yet who haven't you met? Like,
well, I know. I think
who is the one person you have not? I mean, tell me, is there not some famous person you haven't met? I mean, that, obviously within your lifetime. If they lived, you know, before you, couldn't have.
I mean, it would have been wonderful to meet people, but they were before my time. People like von Neumann or so forth. But you know, I think probably, you know, I'm able to say the smartest person I ever met was Robin Williams. Robin Williams'
comedian
brain. Yes, Robin Williams' brain
genius.
ran at a pace that was just awe-inspiring, right, of his set. But you know, I think also people like, you know, people like Erdős, really amazing mathematician.
One of the all-time. I had found out that he actually he was doing like you and I had talked about that. He was doing what, a paper every 8 days, something like that.
Yeah, a peer-reviewed published paper averaged over a lifetime. Over a lifetime every 8 days, right?
How is this possible?
He was just extraordinary, and I like what they said. Among his mini greatness was the ability to ask the right question to the right person at the right time. He knew how to go and approach. So the questions he asked me, you know, were right questions for which he thought I could solve problems. So that was really part of his thing, is his ability to collaborate, and so forth. So yeah, amazing mathematicians, amazing physicists there. But I think the person whose brain, you know, ran at a speed that I just can't fathom, Robin Williams. I mean, his improv, but also his ability to calculate, his ability to do stuff was just. I don't know how brains could operate.
Yeah, he was definitely pure genius. But I mean, look, it's like asking what you like better, an apple or orange. Sometimes you want an apple, somebody like one an orange. You and King Croc, yes. You know, two brilliant people. It wasn't like it was like who's the ugliest person contest, because then we obviously know.
Yeah, but we Reds. But Croc, he's well, yes, and that's sort of that's sort of
so
why
you've seen Reds too. You know that's not you know.
There is an important, now he has a distortion field around him, so that if you happen to glance at it, you're at least spared by some of the electromagnetic radiation that comes from him.
By law.
That was secret CSI, FBI, GFU, SUV technology. You were supposed to keep that to yourself.
Sorry.
We'd explain it was based on Flirt for Technology, by the way.
Oh yes. But the gravitational waves, that's one thing you can detect red by is by gravitational waves if you've got a good enough detector. So
the ugliness is so strong it generates gravitational waves. Absolutely,
it has its own gravitational force. Yes.
Well, all you're doing is you're detecting his mass, right? There's nothing about the condition it's in. You're just detecting the
density of uglity.
mass.
The density of uglity.
Yes, there you go.
I just made up that word.
Here's a question though, just to kind of get on with King Crocoduck. Did any of you guys see his social constructionist videos? Like
oh, yes.
For example, the nuclear winter video where he was going against that one lady. What was her name? Chrisley something or something?
Was it Winter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Winters. Yeah.
Yeah. That has got to be one of the most thorough intellectual ass kickings I have ever seen in my life.
Yes.
That was amazing.
And I will tell you, Reds, and I don't know if I was supposed to tell this or not, but I don't care. He's not listening. I don't think he's ever going to do anything with Winters ever again because it just gave her popularity because he just eviscerated her.
Oh yeah. But sometimes what I do, like I'll have it on in the background while I'm doing my job or driving home or whatever. And I prefer that video over music actually, because just the ass kicking is just so thorough and so juicy. Like, how can you possibly come back from this saying that science is a social construct? It's like, complete bullshit. But the way that Crocoduck was able to like break it down and explain his point. I mean, just the vocabulary that this dude has to pull. He has a vocabulary that I'm envious of.
He's a master. Yeah.
Oh, dude is a master linguist when it comes to this shit. He knows exactly what to say, how to say it, and to dish it out in a way where it's factual, it's thought-provoking, and absolutely fucking brutal, and it's amazing.
Yeah, but it's also polite. I mean, he's not sitting there saying, you're an F-wad. He's demonstrating that, and the
demonstrating it is. He doesn't necessarily have to say it explicitly. It's just by demonstration. You're an F-wad.
One of his points was like when he was talking about the discovery of Pluto being a social construct and how it's the result of this hierarchy of scientific priests, or however the verbiage was. And then King Crocoduck, before going into the history of Pluto's discovery and the fact that Clytombe was actually just a farm boy, wasn't an elite scientist, was starting off that explanation with, what a load of bullshit. And I'm like, I love this. And then immediately goes to eviscerate the shit out of her.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's he's quite articulate, but he's also precise. The other thing I also like about him, he's one of those rare people that what he says is what I call scientifically cringe-free. Right? There are some science communicators that shave things and make stuff too simple and say things that are not quite right. You can quibble with where Crocoduck tends to be. You give what I call cringe-free lectures. I don't cringe at something he says. So anyway, but yes,
he's very precise.
Crocoduck is there. It's been well met, and I really appreciate stuff. I know. I also honor the fact that you are using your extraordinary skills as a physicist in the biomedical field to help people that are in severe need of treatment.
Yeah, he does.
And believe me, that the nuclear medicine advances have been quite extraordinary, and Crockett is right there in the forefront.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's absolutely
and
amazing.
Also, Steve, we can't hear a fucking thing you're saying, just so that you're aware.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear him either.
Why did you choose this format, Steve? Fuck.
I can hear.
I don't know.
My mic's working just fine. Testing.
I don't know. Maybe he's self-muted.
Can the outside hear me? Because I can hear him. I can literally I can see my thing going up and down.
In my case, what I found while he's doing it, what I found has happened is when the show started, it muted me and took off my sound set. So I don't know why it does the way it does.
He's low, but I can hear him.
Oh, people say I can hear him, but he's low.
Yeah, Steve, fix your shit.
So the other possibility is I could just share my screen and launch into the subject at hand. for that. But I would like to hear, a classical nuke guy's commentary on.
You can't hear me.
On fusion. You can tell it's definitely a professional. So Reds, while we're waiting for their, I've also been waiting to see, and experience a Saturn class rocket launch. When I was a little kid, that was kind of to me, that was kind of the normal, right? That to see the Mercury and Apollo launches were sort of seemed like that was like, and as a little kid, I just thought that's what countries did. I mean, I like what was going on, but to me, it was considered kind of normal. Little did I know how extraordinary it was.
Hear me, guys. It's
from there, but I can imagine it would be fun to feel and experience the roar of that rocket taking off. It's going to be a fun. Did you ever experience a shuttle launch, Chris?
I have, yes. I have experienced a shuttle launch, and the only thing that would even remotely come close to that would be Falcon Heavy or Delta IV Heavy. Sure. It's not the same. If now again, I'm going back to kind of like my childhood here, but I do remember that there is just more energy flowing through the atmosphere towards your face when you're using giant solid rocket boosters. Liquid fueled rockets, while loud, while powerful, and definitely they get the fucking job done. Solid rocket boosters are just instant boom, and you are going. And I don't care if you like it or not, because I'm essentially a firework and you can't turn me off.
Yes. So once you light it, you better have.
That's when you.
They can't hear me.
Hold on for dear life, motherfuckers, because it's about to get real. And so now what they're doing with SLS, Steve, fix your shit. What they're doing with SLS is now instead of 3 RS-25 engines, there's 4. Instead of the normal shuttle boosters, they added another segment to each side, so they're even more badass than what they were before. And now this entire contraption is on the launch pad, getting ready to kick ass and take names. And I'm so excited for it. I want to see it. It's just a damn shame they're dealing with issues with the hydrogen leak, and there was also the chink in the foam insulation that they thought was an actual leak in the tank. Then there was a weather violation, so that would have scrubbed the launch anyway. And now they believe that they might have to roll the entire rocket back to the VAB to do some repairs, which, keep in mind, they can only do that a limited number of times, because every time they roll it, it puts stress on the vehicle, and it has a certain allowance for how many times that's allowed to occur. So,
yes, and that's that thing, and that's
okay. How about now?
Some of the science project.
Oh, we can hear you now. Okay. It's about fucking time.
Excellent.
Yay.
Wow.
Skype. Hey, look. I don't know what it is about Skype. I'm sorry, but Skype, you suck. You suck. You suck. You suck. Okay. I don't know how else to say this, but Skype, you suck. I don't know. It's a lot of suckage. But I was listening to you guys' conversation. That was fascinating. So, anyways.
All right.
By the way, Skype sucks.
So shall we start talking about fusion?
Yes, fusion sounds interesting. I happen to not know jack shit about fusion for the most part, but I could probably muddle along a little bit with the the basics. But I hear some. I
just got done watching a documentary on fusion energy. A few tokamaks that are in existence, especially the new one that's apparently a joint venture between multiple countries, and they're going to build the biggest tokamak out there. I believe that's the name, how it's pronounced.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
the interfusion reactor.
Yeah. So we're going to start talking about International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, where that is, and then switch over to what's happening in Livermore. Because Livermore, even though it's a different design, has some really important scientific stuff. And by the way, I did, I know that the Krokodak worked on tokamaks. Although, did you catch when you asked where? Did you catch how he responded?
With who? You
you asked him about, talking about, can you ask, where?
Oh
or
yeah,
what
he
facility.
he responded that basically he can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, and he did it perfectly without any intonation, reflection in there, which sure.
Yeah, that's called the Glomar response.
Yes.
Yes.
And for
Glomar
those
response.
for that knows that to me nail it down to a couple of spots. But
See,
nevertheless,
but here's the thing
he responded correctly.
Here's the thing with the Glomar response. You have to say it often. I don't have to do it at all because everything I know that was classified is worthless information. I mean, who wants to know about a reactor that's 30 years old that was decommissioned in 1995? I think it was 96. I mean, this is so antiquated in its technology that literally nobody. It'd be like, hey, going to the Russians. Hey, I got the secret how to build a 300 baud acoustic modem. You want to know it, guys? They wouldn't care.
Well, given some of the Russian military technology, maybe
that's an upgrade, right? Yeah. So my classified material, that all the thing I learned that was confidential and secret and all that stuff, it's antiquated, so it doesn't really matter. But you probably have to do the Glomar response quite frequently because you've got a history. You've got a history. But either is there, meaning sort of the way or the path is a multi-country project, and basically it's designed to do this reaction, right? To take deuterium and helium-3 and fuse it together to get helium and a neutron. That's what it's set. So you have now this reaction is one of the easier reactions to generate. There's also hydrogen, deuterium, tritium. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let me start again because I was reading it wrong. I was reading the other thing. It's deuterium and tritium. So we have two isotopes of hydrogen that fuse together. You produce a helium nucleus and a neutron with a pretty good thermal energy. This fusion reaction it's one of the easiest to do, in part because of the two charges, the two protons of the items are going to repel each other until the nucleons get near one another, and when they get near enough, the strong nuclear force takes over and the quantum tunnel merge. And that quantum tunnel merging ejects the neutron and produces a helium nucleus. So one of the complicated things that's not just slamming atoms together, but you got to get them together close enough so that they can then quantum tunnel because you had to get much higher temperatures and pressures if it wasn't the fact of the quantum tunneling to cause the fusion. It's one of those things that's in theory very, very simple, but in practice, the theory to practice to make a sustainable fusion reactor that has sustainability to have an output of in the megawatt region to actually be utilized for power, that's where it becomes really difficult because when they make these reactors, they don't really keep them going for very long. Some of them only are a fraction of a second, but they're still trying to be able to put in sufficient enough energy that have these things fuse and get more energy out than what you're putting in. It's not over unity, by the way. It has to do. It has to do with the actual mass defect of the binding curve. But yeah, you have to put a lot of energy in order to try to start getting energy out by these things fusion, and you have to overcome those barriers.
So these two hydrogen isotopes that fuse together again are a matter of if you have a high enough temperature, which is it gives them velocity and density, these sort of pressure, then the nucleons will overcome the repulsive force of the two protons, and they'll quantum merge, and that ignition is a very complicated. Quantum mechanics is rather non-intuitive, and weird things happen with. It's bad enough for the plasma because the plasma you heat it up to the point where the electrons boil off and all you have is the nucleons. But then you've got to get the nucleons together that they start quantum tunneling, and weird things happen with the plasma in that point. We can of course cause hydrogen to fuse in quantity, but it's done in thermonuclear weapons, right? You without going into too much detail of those devices. Somewhere in that process, you have effectively an atom bomb that creates conditions for hydrogen, that is, mix of deuterium and tritium that causes it to fuse on a mass scale, kicking out neutrons that do even more stuff. But that sort of that shock wave and temperature conditions are not something you can do for a sustained reaction. You get a boom rather than a long sustained burn. So that's where tokamaks come into play. And so ITAR is a facility that is being built. It's been located in France here near in this region of France in the southeast corner, and it's a fairly large facility that's under construction, and it's going to build a tokamak. Tokamak is basically a toroid. It has a powerful magnetic field that will give you that where you see here are the magnetic fields, the magnets around in a torus. It creates a magnetic field, a toroidal force. It also creates a magnetic field through the rings, and so the plasma is essentially you get current that causes the plasma to squeeze down, and so you get heating through a field. Plus, you get the magnetic confinement. That is quite. It's one of the better designs. It was a design originally designed by some Russian physicists, and people like this design for a number of pretty good reasons. These tokamaks have, this is a cross section where the hydrogen would be sort of in the middle of this area here, and these are the magnets around it to build this sort of magnetic field that the plasma is confined into. The facility is huge. I mean, if you look at, here's the size, here's people, if you give a sort of scale of this ignition facility. And the timeline for this thing is it's currently in the assembly. They're expecting the assembly to last through perhaps 2025, where they'll have their first plasma, not necessarily fusion, but first plasma inside the chamber. So you've got hydrogen enough to heat and boil off the electrons and contain it there. And over the next 10 years, then they'll basically reach the deuterium-tritium fusion operation. And so this is sort of the hope for what this facility will do.
Where can they find that timeline?
Give
Landon,
physicists a pretty good understanding of what a commercial reactor would
Landon,
look like.
can you hear me?
This is and again, magnetic fusion is probably the most practical way to try to get energy out of the thing. However, is that understanding how plasma behaves has been very tricky. There's a lot of computer models that they try to do, but
Landon, real quick, where can they find this timeline? And by the way, I figured out why every time I go to hard mute, this Skype kicks it off and I have to re-enter. So I'm not going to be doing hard muting when I cough. But that's too small to be seen. Where can they find that time schedule?
This is too small to be seen. I don't understand. It takes up the whole screen. I don't understand what.
Well, yeah, on your end. I could maybe.
I'm showing the entire. It's showing the entire screen.
I'll make it a little large. We'll see if I can make this much larger. 1 sec.
I don't know where, because I'm looking online.
I'll see if I blow this up even. Yeah. Now, yeah, I can make it a little bit bigger and they can see it that way. Okay. It just covers everything else up, but okay.
I see.
While you're talking about it.
I see. In fact, you could expand it so I don't have to. You don't have to see me if you want to do that as well.
Yeah, so everybody can see the timeline.
Because you can cover red so that there isn't a risk that if the camera turns on.
We're completely safe. I mean, seriously, he's sitting at home. He's sitting at home right now with a bag over his head, facing the other direction. His camera's pointed toward the floor with like duct tape around it. He has a whole dude. There's like a checklist when that dude goes online. It's actually
crazy. It's actually in a box made of lead.
But anyway,
the webcam is inside of a box made of lead, so
excellent.
We're good.
Excellent. All right. so in terms of looking at, again, the facility is a large facility, but the exciting thing is if you ask about where this is, if you go to the web page, the Wikipedia page of ITAR, and you scroll down about a third of the way, you'll see the current timeline for what's happening, and you'll see in that set a bunch of current activities going on, such as the subsection. First subsection of the plasma chamber successfully limited, lifted up and lowered into the machine well, and it's a they're planning on getting the vacuum vessel installed, vacuum systems probably finished by 2024. Their first heated plasma in 2025, and then over the next 10 years to reach ignition phase. So. Now, there's been always this joke about that fusion is always this 10 years out or 20 years out, but I think in this case we're talking about something fairly very different. First of all, we have a much better understanding of actually how plasma is behaving, and that's because of this facility called the National Ignition Facility at Lords Labs. This is a facility where we can now get small balls of fusing plasma and study them in great detail to learn about the proper way for ITER to handle fusing plasma. But this laser fusion is a very different concept than a tokamak. However, what this is doing is giving us some really good experimental information about it. So the system is this particular system is an enormous laser. Right? This laser has a peak output of over 500 terawatts. We have a 500 terawatt laser consisting of 182 beams that essentially drill down into a small blob of hydrogen and smash it together to create fusion. So it's a large facility with many different pipes that all focus in on the chamber down here at the bottom, and this was a construction facility when it was there where the chamber was being built. So the chamber is actually this is the ball inside where with all the pipes, the beam pipes there. It's an impressive machine. This is the inside from that ball where the product is going to go. There it is lowered into the facility with the beam pipes there. But again, I don't want to let that gloss by. 500 terawatt laser. Just I mean, that's peak power. That is what you call as Reddit would say, that's one of those big mother effers. Yeah. But you just imagine that yeah, he's gesticulating. Yes, you can imagine that. Well,
what I do in my private time is none of your fucking business.
well, yeah, and I think there was a naive notion that we can build a thermonuclear device and therefore fusion power is just around the corner. and I think that the
Hey, Landon, what was the joke that this technology is always 30 years ahead?
Yes, that was a thing. So that I think we
Oh,
are
there you
that
go.
that game is changing in that sense of there are 3 years or 20 years or pick your time. The so the process that we're going is, first of all, and I'll talk to you more about what this National Ignition Facility is doing, is to give physicists experience with balls of fusing plasma, that and to study how it behaves while they're building ITER, and then they'll be from the learning from this facility. They'll do some fine tweaking on ITER. What ITER will do is give engineers a pretty good concept of how to build a commercial tokamak. So ITER is, again, this experimental facility where they will get short bursts of plasma at scale, and that will give them the knowledge of how to build a fusion reactor. Again, it's difficult. It's quite difficult. I mean, very, very smart people have been working in this for a while, and perhaps the joke, as you said, was because we were perhaps a bit naive.
Yeah, the outside couldn't hear me on that. So just to reiterate to the outside, I was asking Landon about the fusion energy gain factor, which is basically a term, a Q factor term in fusion, that if you put so much energy into your system, how much can you get out as a factor? So if you're putting in a sustainable break-even point where you're just putting in energy and you're getting energy out, you're not really producing anything of use to society. You want to be able to have a very sustained output of a very high wattage and joules, and the goal is to kind of get around 5, a Q factor of 5. At that point, it is sustained where they can say, look, we have actual fusion reactors that can produce energy at a very efficient, self-sustaining rate, which is extremely cost efficient compared to things like oil fuse and any kind of fossil fuels, and even nuclear fuel. Fusion reactors is much more efficient in that regards, and also far less radioactive waste.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And so yes, and you need something more than just one, because thermodynamic, you're going to have losses, right? And then of course you have, the other, of course, is you don't want to have an economic loss, right? So there's sort of the notion of physicists break even, which is more energy out than in, and there's entering break even, which is it can run for a while, and there's economic break even, which is you can actually
make money. Be economically
run it for a profit. Right?
So let me ask you: do you think something like this would ever be small enough where Reds would get all interested and they could put it on rockets? Oh, we have an initiate, Kano Browner. Welcome, initiate, to the Non-Sequitur Show. That is Kano, the wonderful, the amazing Kano. Thank you, Kano. And by the way,
thank you, Kano.
The link to my GoFundMe is at the very top. I am checking it. All you have to say for $1 is "Trolls go f off" or something like that. Something like that.
You have a GoFundMe? I never knew that.
I also got a Patreon too. The Patreon I put every so often in the channel, so people want to be a patron on this channel because we have to, be able to get amazing guests, and then occasionally we get Reds. But
yeah. So back to say with the ignition facility. So the ignition facility is going to give us for the first time small bits of fusing plasma where they're getting reasonable amount of energy out, much more energy out than putting in, and we get to monitor it and do experiments and have lots of sensors around it to better understand how fusing plasma is behaving, how that quantum tunneling process is behaving, and that's gonna give us some better insights and how to improve ITER, which will, when it's finished, when it starts doing its expected deuterium tritium runs in 2035, that's going to give us a really good insight into how to make a sustaining practical fusion reactor. Now, one thing to think with this ignition facility, it's a huge facility, but one thing that was impressed upon me was this laser system I don't think is practical, even though the ignition people would probably argue with me on that. because it is such a sensitive system. First of all, this entire facility has to be under enormous vacuum in an incredible clean room system. And this system is huge. This is just showing you some of the tunnels of the beams, the 192 beams coming down to the chamber. And they have to go through, even though the outside the vacuum, they have to go in and keep it fairly clean, because contamination is really can be a death knell to this facility. One thing, for example, that these are like mirrors that the beams are bouncing off of on their way into the facility, and these have to be ultra clean. And they go through a incredible process to try to remove contaminants. I saw a case where they were doing a shot of just one of the 192 beams was in a test run, and there was a speck of dust that was about the size of a virus, and that speck, when the laser pulse came through, it created electromagnetic fields around it, diffraction. That diffraction caused heat points on the mirror, and the result was an explosion where most of that mirror was vaporized and sent 100 meters down the chamber because of something a little bit the size of a virus on the plate. So they have to keep this ultra clean, because any contaminants just
I don't
knock
even know
this
how it's
out.
biologically possible. I mean, it just seems unimaginable that you have a clean room to that degree. I mean, the amount of cleanliness, which we'll get into for the James Webb Telescope, was exceptional. I mean, it had to be extremely the protocols for the clean room. This is even greater than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's on a large scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you have pollen grains that would just knock it out, so forth, it's a thing. So here is showing you a couple of beams heading towards the chamber, where you can see the portals there where the beams are running into the spot. This shows you that ball with the various 102 beams coming into the chamber. This actually is showing you what it looked like as they were building that segmented chamber inside.
But this is your favorite design. What designs do you prefer? Like a Z-pinch system?
Well, Z-pinch, it's hopeful. I don't know if it's somewhere between Z-pinch and tokamak, I think, are the way to go for a commercial reactor. Mm-hmm. But if you want to study how plasma behaves and not setting off nukes in atolls,
laser this.
Yeah, this is the way of running experiments on set. So we're looking down into the pipes coming into the injection facility, and what the polonium is this is the target, right, of those lasers. This particular cylinder. Inside the cylinder, this is what it looks like on the outside. That the beams come in from the top and the bottom, and inside the facility is this particular pellet. The pellet here, this is the size of the pellet that has a shell around it with deuterium, tritium gas inside. That's the pellet that gets fused. So the lasers essentially heat the outside of the pellet from all 182 beams coming in, the 500 terawatts converging on that spot, and the shock wave crushes the deuterium tritium mixture and initiates fusion.
So it's not just the heat from the lasers, it's the fact that it's acting as a compressor, and the compression itself also, obviously, the temperature goes up when things are compressed, so the gas compresses. Charles' law, Boyle's law, all that physics stuff. That,
yes.
We're not going to get into the physics, but it compresses in the shock waves.
Yeah, the compression, but also the fact it's the shape of the laser beam, the peak power.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a pop; it's a push and hold. Right. Though that there's a considerable amount of energy which is hitting it from all sides and forcing it into that fusion state.
It's kind of funny because of plutonium. A bomb, what is
Ulam.
the Tulum? Yeah, design. Ulam Teller design, which is a fission. Is very similar. Is it not for at least the compression to try to get the?
I mean,
this is sustained. This is instead of being one shot. This is like that, but sustained.
Well, this thing that in the sort of the typical atom bomb type shots, you're taking a subcritical sphere, let's say a plutonium, and crushing it to become critical,
supercritical.
But you're holding it there for you're holding it for enough number of nanoseconds that it undergoes the chain reaction.
Mm-hmm.
This is a case where you've got a pellet inside this chamber in precisely aimed, and around it they put all kinds of instrumentation. So the value is that when that pellet, that tiny little pellet, again we're talking about something, this tiny little bit here, when this tiny little pellet sitting in here inside this thing, we can have all these all the X-ray, gamma ray, and other instruments around it to understand what happened and to watch the reaction at very, very high speed. So unlike a thermal device where it just blows it apart and you sort of say, yeah, a bunch of things happen. Here it's small enough that we can actually get some pretty intricate detail as to the processes going on to learn about plasma, because plasma is a really weird system.
Yeah, now what would happen if Red's rhetoric put his face in that beam? Would it fix anything? It couldn't cause any more damage. So I'm assuming that it can only get better. But what would happen?
I think that there'd be a very interesting collision between the Red's radiance and the 500
the
terawatts
lasers
of
would probably
photons.
they'd probably just like nope, and just yep.
Basically, the entire infrastructure would implode on itself, and it would create a supermassive black hole.
No, that's CERN. That's the other facilities. That's what CERN's doing.
Oh no, it would do that too. It would do that too. Keep in mind, you bring this face into any facility of science, and it automatically implodes it into a black hole. If you bring this face into a daycare or an elementary school, then what you have is a war crime. You have a fucking war crime.
Yeah. Skeptic 77 made a mistake. He says he would get more ugly. No, you don't understand. He's like absolute zero when it comes to ugliness. You can't get colder than absolute zero. He's like the base. So it can't do any more damage. You can't. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and from a boson condensate, there's only sort of one, because of Pauli exclusion principle, right? Reds is his own Pauli exclusion state. And you're not allowed to be in the same state. You're not allowed to be in the same state as Reds. It's just the universe doesn't allow it.
Let me put it to you this way. My face makes sure that Schrodinger's cat remains dead.
Yes, it does the measurement. So back to say with this facility, this ignition facility is a humongous thing. So each one of these lines, there's 192 pipes that are coming down there that are all focusing on this one spot, right? So you get 48, and here they deliver your 500 terawatts of peak power onto that pellet that's sitting inside this aluminum column, and with all this information around it. Now it turns out that if you talk about the power, only about 10 to 20% of the laser power actually gets focused into the capsule, right? Because there's a number of things happening from scattering off, the scatter off of reflecting off the surface. You've got low density plasma that's not fusing. You've got hot electrons. You get heating of the actual walls of the holrum. You've got X-rays and so forth that escape through there. So you only get about 10 to 20% of the actual laser that is achieving ignition. Now the facility, there's actually quite it reminds me of sort of like NASA launch facilities. There's incredible amount of instrumentation, as well as system checks and so forth. It has control rooms that remind me of like a a launch facility. I know what they're doing. In fact, there are people like this. Here's the launch shot director. This is the person of the launch commander who is the one that finally gives the go ahead once everything is lined up. Everything is, because they have to do all kinds of alignment checks. You don't want one of those lasers to be off a little bit. You don't want so they'll send gentle light pulses down to look for any particles that can cause the thing to self-destruct. They're looking for all kinds of stuff, so they go through all kinds of checks before then run the shot. And they have again lots of imaging around it to check and make sure everything, that the things on target, everything is aligned. And then when they finally do the shot, then everyone sort of crowds around to see, well, what happened, right? And to look at the X-rays, the gamma rays, the magnetic fields, the high-speed movies of this particular shot happening. It's small enough that the thing doesn't blow itself up, but it's large enough you. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But here's the good news. The good news is they're now getting impressive yields. This was the yield they're getting out of these shots, and they finally got things right where they're now hitting close to 1.4 megajoules out of the fusion of stuff. So not only is it fusing, but it's fusing with a bang. In fact, people talk about when you hear it, you can hear an audible kaboom coming from the fusion of this tiny little pellet inside that set, and they turned around it to really kind of begin to get a much deeper understanding of how fusing plasma works. So this has got a impressive yield out of it. Again, much more than what's getting into the system. But the thing now they're doing is they can now take and vary the mix of deuterium tritium, and they can vary the mix on the edges to sort of experiment around with parameters. Now they're getting to the point where, so basically what they're saying is they've lit the firecracker, and the firecracker now goes bang.
So now they're trying to figure out the actual proper ratios for like deuterium and tritium to get the more bang for your buck. Because even when they started developing on the nuclear weapons for fission, a lot of things that went into it was criticality ratio. The geometric.
Yes.
The most efficient have a geometric shape where you have the most bang for your buck to get the most amount of damage. That was the whole thing. I mean, they knew how to do it, but they didn't want just a little poof. They wanted a boom. And so is this thing similar where they're working with the details now, knowing what they can get, and to kind of like saying, okay, what's the best way to arrange, how much deuterium, how much deuterium, and things of that nature to get the most amount of Q factor out of it?
Yes, that's one thing. Another thing that they can't do with a thermonuclear device is they're changing the shape and duration of the crush, right? With a laser, you can shape the power, and you can talk about saying, and over time, right? So you can, for example, there's one school of thought that says you give it a initial peak slam, and then you ease off of it, and then you give it a taper off. And the other one says you get a peak slam, you go down because it takes time for the material to crush. So you want that first slam where you got the inertia of it going into fusing, and then you want to hit it with the second.
So why wouldn't they have a pulse rate? Why wouldn't they have? I mean, if something along those lines where you're waiting for it to cool off a little bit, why wouldn't they have like a pulse laser?
Well, in some ways that they can shape that thing. We're talking about over picoseconds of shaping the power. But the question is you don't necessarily want to say, you don't want to put all of your energy into one photon front that slams, right? You want to start heating up the outside edge and causing it's the superheating that causes that pellet of the outside causes it to crush inwards, and you want to wait for the momentum of the plasma to get into the dense state, and then you want to pour in energy on top of that. So you want to have like almost like a double bang. It's one thought. So they can change the shape. They can change the ratio of the shock front and how it tapers off, and if we got a second shock front or even a third shock front. They can do these kind of experiments because now they can essentially load in these little things with the pellets inside the experiment chamber, and then do a shot, and analyze what happened and fine tune it. With a thermonuclear device, you just say, well, set it off, and you look at the yield, right?
Right.
It's because the atom bomb is creating the conditions for the deuterium-tritium to fuse. You don't have a lot of control over that.
Yeah. A lot of chaos.
Atom bombs are
yeah. I mean, because for those who don't know, fusion bomb requires a fission bomb to set it off. That's basically the detonator, I guess you can speak. It's not the correct term, but you need a fission reaction to get to the certain temperatures in order to initiate the fusion of the deuterium in a fission bomb. So when you have that initial fission going off and you have the initial bomb exploding, you have chaos. It's controlled chaos is basically what it is. This is far more precision technology in order to like you said, get the lasers on there, figure out, okay, when do we need to pump in more energy, when do we need to pull back a little more energy to maximize the amount of fusion going on and getting something useful out of it.
It's really good, really cool technology, I have to say. But of course, the real reason I'm here was to say hi to Landon, and I think I actually did that. But being that it's pretty much midnight over here, well,
we haven't got to the James Webb Telescope stuff yet.
I know. It's just that I got shit I gotta do tomorrow.
I tell you what. I'm gonna substitute you with somebody else, Reds. You're second string now. I'm gonna bring somebody else in. But before you go, go ahead.
I want to say, Red, your high respect. I love your rocket entry stuff. I'm hoping that you're able to record Artemis launch, because I think you could do sometimes as better or more fun than some of the NASA footage of those rocket launches. So you do a good job. And you go bother people that are stupid.
No, he does a great job. Look, his footage of these launches are better than the news organizations. I mean, they are the best on the internet. Let's give it to him. He's the best at it.
And coming from you, Landon, that does mean a lot. And come hell or high water, I'm going to film this damn thing, and it's going to be amazing when I do film it. And when it comes to Artemis, I've already been there twice. I've been there for 2 scrubs. I've been chewed up by mosquitoes. I've had to sleep on the side of the road. It's been a pain in the ass. But Landon, for you, good sir, I will persevere. I will get that shot, and it will be.
Thank you.
For Landon, do it for Landon.
Yeah, for Landon, of course, because let's face it, he's Landon.
Yeah, right.
If he's like, I hope you get this shot. Oh, now I gotta succeed.
Reds,
failure is not an option.
Reds, can I make a suggestion? Are you going to name the launch after him like you used to do?
I could do that, absolutely. I'll call it Landon's launch, and when it comes to the SLS, because let's face it, you gotta save the best for the best, and we have the SLS being one of the best, Landon being the best. It only fits, right?
I got a little Delta IV named after me, which is, I'm still to this day I'm really like over the moon over it. But Delta IV compared to like what he's doing now. But yeah, so you get the big rockets, dude.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks again for recording these minute events. Of course. Your images are great, but of course being there, it must be awesome, right? The people that talk about being there and watching the Saturn V launches, getting that shockwave hit them and so forth. It must be a wonderful experience.
Oh, it absolutely is. And that's the thing. What I would the title of this stream, if I can kind of deviate, is science communication. Here's the best way to communicate something like that is to bring people there. At some point, everyone, at least once in their life, they have to go experience a rocket launch for themselves.
Yes.
And
yes.
when you go and you experience it, and especially like the big ones like Artemis or Falcon Heavy or Delta IV Heavy, or when Falcon Heavy, when they land the boosters, that is such an experience that just cannot be put into words. Everyone should put that on their bucket list. Do not pass away from this earth until you go to a rocket launch and experience it for yourself. And of course, the best way that we can do second to that is to get really good shots of it. I really try really fucking hard to get the best shots possible. And, you know, like I said, I've been featured by Scott Manley. My footage has even been used on the news a few times. And, you know, it's really, really nice that happens. And Landon, just for you, good sir, I am going to do everything in my power to get the best damn shot possible of SLS, because let's face it, you earned it. You earned it because you're awesome.
Well,
I'm going to do this for you.
You know, if it was a Falcon 9, you could have called it Landon's Landing. You know,
but I'm saying it is a case where, you know, because the ultimate goal for the planetary scientists is they want that lunar telescope. The lunar surface is a really nasty place, particularly for precision optics, and you need that telescope serviced. And so we need this program to build a lunar base where people can service the lunar telescope and have it operate, because from the moon we're able to do extraordinary things that you know, for astronomy, as well as the sheer joy of going back to the moon finally, right? That being said, I'm looking forward, Reds, for you to argue about, you know, when we come back to the moon, the deniers will be out there in force, and I look forward to you eviscerating them.
They destroyed the technology.
So Reds, before you leave, do you want to give a little precursor of what you're working on? Do you want to keep that under wraps real quick? It's up to you. Your call.
I'm working on a lot of precursors. Which one are you referring to?
The mind-numbing call that you had prior to entering this one.
Oh, well, that's already over. Yeah, that's not going to happen anymore.
Bummer.
Yeah. So, you guys can just see it on my channel. Basically, it was a colossal waste of time. I don't recommend it. But if you're morbidly curious, or basically, if you hate yourself for whatever reason, you can watch the most recent upload on my channel. It's absolutely pointless. No one should watch this, and if you do, I apologize, because wow.
All right, buddy, get out of here. I appreciate it, and I will be in touch with you. Okay.
All right, peace out. And Landon, it's a pleasure as always, and I salute you, sir, and have a good one.
Hi, bud.
Likewise.
And somebody else I was just talking to, if they like to join, they have the link. Come on in, and I'll introduce you if you decide to join.
So before we go over to the James Wade, are there any questions that you have about Fusion or the facilities or what's happening?
I think they're following along okay. I mean, the big kind of takeaway is that supposedly this is the time where, oh yeah, they really do have something. They have finally break in certain boundaries that and scientific breakthroughs to get to the point where they can say, yes, this is a viable technology, and hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, according to whatever timeline that was, they get some sustainable stuff, because we need alternative fuels. There's no question about it. I mean, there's just the renewable energies is the way to go. Even though that, like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but do you know that in 2035, California is no longer able to sell combustion engine cars. They're going to be selling only electric cars. Now, obviously, they're going to have used cars.
Yeah.
But all the new cars are going to be electrical. And the problem is that they're already kind of figuring out that if they do this, they're going to have a huge problem with supplying enough power to these vehicles. It's like they didn't think this through. Okay, you pass a law where now you start having to have electric vehicles, which have very high energy demands because the batteries have to be charged every 100 miles. Where's this energy going to come from? And they've had all these moratoriums on building the nuclear power plants. I mean, I don't remember even the last time the NRC gave a permit to build a nuclear reactor. It's been a very, very long time. So they need to start working on developing either fission or, in this case, fusion, because we're going to be in an energy crisis in the next few decades if this is the route that they're going to go. So.
Yeah, and this is a problem that there are a number of even green energy sources for which the actual system delivery is not green. Pretty good energy sources that are variable, like solar, like wind, you need to have a energy storage, and some of those energy storage have a carbon footprint, right? They're not carbon neutral. So that's where you need to consider alternative systems. In any kind of rational energy system, you need to have different modes, because different types of energy systems have different pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
You also don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Now, again, if you look at the timeline for first plasma emitter is 2025. The first fusion is probably 2035. I think in part because they're going to need to work at Livermore to get a better idea about how plasma works in order to fine tune the ITER design. And then ITER is going to give them around 2035 the experiments to understand how to do tokamaks at scale, where there's then another engineering thing for then scaling it up. But if you look at the history of nuclear reactors, right? There was a period of time where you had your first sort of experimental reactors until you actually get, because when was like the first naval nuclear sub? When did that launch?
Oh my God! Well, they started experimenting with the SL1 Army reactor. There was also S1C in Windsor, but the first actual deployment was 19. Oh God, that's a good question. I should know this. First, let's look it up. This is what we have Google for.
But because the first carbon pile,
1954, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I knew it was
40...
a Nautilus. Yeah, USS Nautilus. I knew it was a Nautilus named after Jules Verne.
Nautilus.
Yeah, I knew it was a Nautilus, but I didn't know there was. Yeah, so 1954 was the first nuclear power.
42 to 54. So 12 years between the first experimental reactor period to a reactor that actually had some sustainable. And I think the Nautilus as being one of the cases where we had a power plant that was mobile, that actually had sustained power that was relatively safe.
My ship was a D2G reactor core system, and it was about a 150 megawatt reactor. And the core itself, the actual core, forget the pressure vessel, forget everything else, just what's in the reactor where the CD control rod drive mechanisms were, the CRDMs. It was about the size of those small trash cans. Yeah, it's about the size of a trash can. It wasn't very big. I mean, it's very, very, very small. Yeah. People think these reactors are massive. No, the cores are not that big for even a 150 megawatt reactor. So
it's all the stuff around it.
Yeah, it's all the stuff around it. Right.
And then the people that around the stuff to keep these things sustained. So fusion system. If it took fission 12 years to go from the first carbon pile that Ferry did at Chicago to a mobile plant that could have some duration sustained, you might see a similar length between the first shot that ITER has showing tokamak plasma fusing at scale to a reactor that has sustainable CO sets. But I think that we're going to look forward to milestones and successes as opposed to hope. That's the
Well, let's jump into the James Webb telescope. Speaking of James Webb, James, there's another James out there that was going to, I think, come in, but he hasn't yet because James Webb. So give a hint. Anyways, though, so let's talk about the James Webb telescope because this, to me, seriously, is one of the greatest monumental achievements in humanity to date. The amount of effort that went to making this, and it actually worked, and it worked not only to spec, but better than they had even expected, I think. And it was just a major process to getting it not only to completion to build and put it in space, but also the cool down process, the assembly process, the all the stuff that it had to go to do once it reached the was it L2 or L1? It's L1, right?
L2.
L2, okay.
Isn't L2 because L1 isn't L1 is the one towards the sun.
Yeah,
L2 going away
L1 has that actually took a picture of the Earth too. Was it the solar?
Yeah, the Soho. That's where the Soho.
Yeah, so it's L2.
Is that.
So in order, once it got there was a huge procedure that it had to go to cool down and get alignment. So let's get into that because I found that to be so interesting.
Yeah, I mean this is one of those things where they did a number of halts of the project and back to the construction phase because they found problems. Right, they did because this was something. It's out well beyond almost a million plus kilometers from Earth, well beyond a place where something like that you could service easily. And so this is something where it has to work out there the first time, and and this is something also where the had they tried to launch it anyway when they thought there were issues, it would have failed. Right? They know now that care of stuff and the extra time and some of the rebuilds of things were fundamentally necessary to actually get this thing to work, and they pulled it off. And so we see here this image of the incredible complexity of this thing. This telescope is too big to fit in a rocket assembled, so it had to fold up in this origami type maneuver where the sides of the stuff so that this shield down here you see if people are seeing it inside the shield down there in the bottom. This is about the size of a tennis ball court. This is part of the shielding necessary with this ultra thin shielding that if this thing rips, you're doomed. This particular mirror assembly system is necessary because one of the things that this telescope is doing is it is looking at wavelengths of light that are much longer than visible. The rainbow we see out in the sky is one octave of frequencies from the deep red up to the violets, and that represents one octave of frequencies. This telescope is actually seeing about 7 octaves down below the visible spectrum. It does see into red and a little bit of orange, but the most of its thing are the 7 octaves below in the infrared. And that's because you're either dealing with objects that are so far away, they're so redshifted that the visible light has or ultraviolet has been pushed way deep into the infrared, or they're objects that are cool, like a planet, not like a star. It's not glowing like a star. It is radiating heat like a planet, and that also radiates down in the infrared.
It's basically a very expensive heat detector. That's essentially what it is.
Yes.
It's a heat detector. It's detecting heat because heat is in the infrared spectrum, but it gets into some of the lower visible light waves. But what amazes me is that these objects that some of these things that are seeing are so far away. And yes, obviously you're going to have the gravitational redshift. Okay, so it's automatically going to be redshifted down quite a bit. However, it still blows my mind there's enough photons to be from something a billion years away, light years away, to reach this and have it detected and enough to even have it imaged. How does that even happen, that you have something 13 billion light years away with still enough photons reaching from that object to this object that it can detect? I mean, it cannot be that many photons.
You can do long exposure and you can hold it steady.
It's amazing.
But there's another thing as well on top of this telescope is that you talk about you're recording essentially low temperature objects.
Yeah.
And that means the telescope has to be ultra cold. The reason why this telescope can't be on Earth is because the terrestrial temperatures on Earth would radiate so strongly in the infrared that it basically get blinded. Right?
Well, the shield the shield's is facing toward the sun, right? So that's actually helping to cool down the telescope itself.
This has an effect of about 1 billion SPF of sunlight being incredibly dimmed, so that this thing is in the black of space.
It's in darkness.
Yeah. Yes. And so this particular shield, points towards the sun, The telescope has some free movement on the shield about 160 degrees side to side. So, but because it's tracking around the Earth, it means that you can see, about half of the sky at any one point in the time of year. So if you need to look at something, at the opposite direction, you have to wait 6 months for the telescope to be oriented towards that thing, or some number of months before the telescope orients, because again, it can't point towards the sun.
So it hasn't even made a full revolution around the sun yet. It just got launched, obviously. So anything on the other side, anything that we want to look at from, the opposite view that it's showing now, like for example, you see the picture here. Anything that's on the other end of the sky, we have to wait several months for it to get around there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Because again, you can't heat it up. So even if this telescope were low Earth orbit, like where the space station is, there's enough glow and enough temperature stuff from the Earth that it would blind it. Mm-hmm. So it really needed to be away from the sun. Now, it's a little bit of a complication that it would have been nice to have been perfectly in line where the Earth eclipses the sun. However, at that point, your solar panels don't work.
Yeah,
right?
you need to get some energy from it. Yeah.
You need to get some. So there's solar panels on here that are powering it. So in fact, it isn't perfectly on the Earth-Sun line. It actually circles a point before L2, so that it's outside the Earth's shadow, and so it can pick up solar radiation. But it's got that giant shield on it to keep the sun from heating the object.
Somebody
in
had
fact,
asked.
if we look,
good.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, somebody had asked, how does it handle micrometers? Which is a great question, and also dust, stellar dust.
Well, they'll ding it over time. Micrometer stuff will ding the thing. In fact, we've known, we can tell that's gotten some hits. That's expected over its lifetime, and they can, these mirrors are adjustable, so if it gets super dinged, they can kind of reform it. But it's expected to get pelted by gravel stuff. Again, on a telescope mirror, you could have some pretty bad spots, right? For stuff. There was a situation, when with the 200-inch hail, where somebody, disobeyed protocol, left a bolt up into the cage, and when they rolled it around, this bolt basically fell down and went bang against the spot and took out a chip, cracked a chip on it. But you've got 200 inches of diameter of glass, so the amount you lose is a small fraction. You don't want to ding it, but again, the same thing. The micrometeorite will take a ding in it, but it's the overall curvature, overall surface area that's still going to operate. So you only get minor fraction of a percent of stuff will degrade towards dust. And of course, it's well outside of Earth's atmosphere and the space junk that's orbiting around Earth. So it's going to be relatively free of that kind of cruft. But there's lots of cruft out in space, and it'll happen. There's a site, you can say, where is Web, and it shows you current status and stuff. I picked this up just before we went on the air, and it talks about the temperature. So if we look at the hot side versus cold side. So the hot side is where the sun is heating, and you have temperatures between 13 Celsius and 50 Celsius. The cold side is between minus 231 to minus 236 Celsius.
This is real-time data.
So it's roughly, this is real-time data. It's roughly 40. The telescope is operating at roughly 40 Kelvin, sitting near something that's roughly room temperature to actually halfway to boiling. And again, you can see that the temperatures of the various instruments there. It'll tell you about the distance. It'll tell you about the location stuff and what's happening in sound vibrations. Again, there is the stuff. So where is Webb? And of course you can, and it's a really nice site to say what's the telescope doing.
40 Kelvin seems awfully hot, though. I mean, it's just, that's 100. I just looked at it because absolute zero is around 459 Fahrenheit, whatever it is. I don't remember in Celsius, but 459 Celsius. 40 Kelvin is 387, negative 387 Fahrenheit. I mean, that's quite a bit above absolute zero still, though.
I mean, it's 40 degrees above
273.15. That's what it is.
zero.
Yeah, 273.15 is absolute zero in
Yeah.
Celsius.
So 273. So it is it's instead of minus 273, it's minus 236.
Yeah, it's minus 233 Celsius. Absolute zero is minus 273, so it's 50 degrees Celsius above.
Yeah, it's
which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot above absolute zero, really. That's a considerable
amount. But it's
amount.
about the surface temperature of Pluto, right? Dwarf planet Pluto is about that temperature.
Yeah. So it's enough. It's still significantly low enough where it can detect these really redshifted heat sources that are a billion miles away. Yeah.
And that has put a limit on the some of the deeper. It can't go to some of the far infrared, right? That would require really cryogenic stuff, and they didn't want to have a liquid helium duo, which would exhaust the force.
Maybe in the future, right?
Pure. Yeah. This is pure shielding, electric cooling, radiator in space process that's going on. So it won't run out of coolant that they've done with sort of some of the cold telescopes. The principal design has the main. You have the main hexagonal mirror, but light comes in. It's coming in from the right, bounce off the mirror, and then this strut out here is holding a secondary mirror. So this bounces it back, and there's a hole through the tube where the light comes through, and then there's instrumentation that bounces it down into the instrument box down here. So it goes through sort of several reflections to get there. This is the main light gathering instrument in terms of focusing the photons off of here, back here, and down into the instrument bay. Now, one thing that you do see is diffraction spikes, and let me go and zoom up here to show you.
Yeah, that was something that people first noticed when their alignment, that the diffraction spikes. They were doing the alignment testing, and was the alignment spikes actually integral in or the diffraction spikes integral in aligning it? Did they actually use those to their advantage to align it?
Yes, in terms of the diffraction spikes have to be symmetrical, but the diffraction spikes come as a result of the shape and pattern of the mirror. So if you see, Hubble had four struts in a circular system, so you got the four spikes. With Webb, you have the 60-degree angles on its struts with a hex as well. That gave you your sort of your hex pattern. If you look at the mirror shape, right? Again, this is optics. A disc will give you this sort of fringe pattern. A square will give you these sort of ripples out there, whereas a hex will give you the ripples at a on a 6-spike system.
Now these are for closer stars. I mean, if a star is very, very far away and pinpoint, you're not going to get that much diffraction, right?
Yes, I think because it may be much less. Also, the struts give you some. The struts that's holding the secondary mirror, that's going to give you stuff. If you had 2, you'd get a line. If you had 4, you'd get this square. But because of the 3 system that they have, you get this sort of six-way pattern involved. And so the combined set of stuff gives you this is what you end up getting for a star pattern, right? A bright object will show you these spikes, the major spikes and the minor spikes.
Yep.
In there, and that's a function of so a bright star like this will show those patterns. Something relatively dim won't.
Yep.
And also you can then use software to subtract out stuff, but only the bright stuff will give you that sort of glare there. So that's one of the things that, for example, when you first get the raw image, you get something that looks like this. So here is, for example, Jupiter, right? This is the first raw image they took off of Jupiter as they were swinging by, grabbing stuff. You can see a moon here, Io, and it's quite bright with the diffraction spikes. Of course, Jupiter has lots of diffraction spikes on it as well. But once you start cleaning it up, where you go and you look at a narrow wavelength rather than just broad wavelength and cut down the brightness, you get something that looks like this, right?
That's
so
amazing.
this
That's
is
so
this
awesome.
This is Jupiter from the Webb telescope in the infrared, and a couple of things you see is like this stuff on the top and the bottom. These are auroras.
Yeah, that's so
on
cool.
of like the northern and southern lights coming from gas erupting off of Io, the ion streaming around in Jupiter's magnetic field and slamming into the surface and generating that stuff. Here's the great red spot, right? That's about 2 Earth diameters in size, and you see the other details. I mean, this is akin to having like a Galileo or a telescope orbiting Jupiter, looking at it in great detail. But we're seeing it outside. We're seeing it in the infrared. We're seeing, for example, in that red spot, we're seeing temperature gradients inside the storm.
I don't think people recognize how much detail is actually in this thing. I mean, obviously the real image, the main images are super, super high detailed, but there is so much more detail you can get in this wavelength than you can from the visible light.
Yes, and you look at like this dot here is actually one of the shadows of one of the moons.
Is that Io? Right
there, for example. Yeah, on it. But even more so, this particular image. This was something. What we're seeing
so
here.
Awesome.
We see Jupiter, but we also see the rings at the same time. The rings are around Jupiter are incredibly faint. They've only been really imaged by spacecraft passing by or orbiting Jupiter itself. But we're seeing the ultra faint rings at the same time we're seeing bright Jupiter. Yeah. We're seeing there's a moon inside. This is one of the moons responsible for the Jovian ring itself. Effective.
Well, the ring in the middle, the rings in the middle, the top and the bottom, those aren't rings; those are the auroras. But the middle ring right there, because Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune all have a faint ring.
Here's the ring. This is the Jovian ring right there. So this is the fraction spike from the aurora. Uh-huh. This spike here, Io is just off of the edge of this thing. So you're seeing the fraction spike from the moon Io that's causing this aurora to occur. It's just outside the field because it would just be glaring. And here's 2 very faint moons inside, plus again incredible detail that you're seeing on the surface. But the dynamic range, right? Because if you look at when I look at Jupiter, like the 0.8 meter telescope, I actually have to put on neutral filters to cut it down because it's so bright. Jupiter is so bright. Mm-hmm. But again, the dynamic range between this bright planet and this ultra faint ring, and you're seeing faint galaxy. These are galaxies next to.
Yeah,
next to
I
Jupiter,
mean, you would figure that being so bright that it should just wash out the other stuff.
But the optics are so clean,
right?
And
that's amazing.
And so you're seeing that set. That's really quite an impressive system.
Yeah, because normally when if you look at the Jupiter through a telescope, you don't see a lot of stars right. Like in the, at least on an image, you have to have a higher exposure because of it basically washes out everything. Now, if you look at Jupiter through even with a good pair of binoculars, you can actually see the 4 moons pretty clearly most of the time. They're small, but you can see them come out from the line, even with a good pair of binoculars. But through a telescope, the first time I ever saw that, I was like, oh my God! You can and okay, you know what? I'm going to ask you something. Is this like a legend or a myth? Because I've heard this. If Jupiter wasn't so bright, because it does have a high reflection, the albedo, if it wasn't so bright with such a high albedo, would you be able to see the moons with the naked eye?
Yeah, the 4 Galilean moons are bright enough you could see them.
You can notice them. I've heard that, and I was like, but they're so close to the planet though. But if they weren't,
So one thing you can do on a very cold, crisp night is to find a very, very thin guy wire and have that guy wire basically perpendicular to the plane of Jupiter and let Jupiter be blocked by the wire. Mm-hmm. And you can see. And if something like Io or Ganymede or Callisto in there, you can, and your eyes are very, very dark adaptive.
You might be able to see
it. It's a 5th magnitude object, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's a 5th magnitude, so
visible.
It would be a faint star, mm-hmm. but you wait. So one thing you can't see staring at the bright Jupiter because your eyes will bothered. So you wait until the Jupiter drifts in front of the guide wire, and the guide wire is, and you know which side the moon, one of the bright moons, is on, and then you can see that moon.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. Somebody's going to try that experiment.
You want to be cold because it's pretty close to Jupiter, so you want to be cold, crisp. You don't have a lot of thermal stuff. Right. And got well adopted blackness. It's possible, but it's
not the really optimal viewing conditions. They have to be no thermal, things. The atmosphere very, very non-turbulent, very dark skies. Because the faintest you can really see with the eye is about 6 magnitude. Although I've heard rumors that there have been certain people that have claimed to be able to see like the more of the Seven Sisters because they were like 6 and 7th magnitude. But I mean 4 magnitude is about my limit. I can't really see past that, but I have terrible vision.
Yeah.
But, what are we looking at here? Is this Edakari? No, that's not Edakari.
So this is the Cartwheel Galaxy. It's one of the and one of these things where you have these ring galaxies that in the broad spectrum you get some pretty interesting details. But again, this bright galaxy, and you see well-developed galaxies behind it, right? And again, if you start zooming in on this stuff, you're seeing galaxies shining through this galaxy. These are galaxies behind it, and some of these red ones are really far away galaxies on that set. But then if you take something like, for example, because this has got several octaves of infrared going through the telescope. When you look at some of them very narrow band, here's a case with the same thing, but now what we're seeing is we're looking at frequencies where you see star formation, the hydrogen of the young stars being formed. So this, you see that the detail of the galaxy, but this is showing you at the frequency where hydrogen is particularly active, and you can see the filaments where stars are being formed inside this galaxy. So you have star formation going on in the rim of the galaxy, but you also see some of the spokes as well. Plus, you see some of the fainter infrared galaxies coming through. Here's another one of Eta Carina, and the Carina Nebula. It's called the Carina Nebula. Is an amazing object, star formation region, and in this particular case, the detail we see in infrared. A lot more detail because we're seeing through the dust. All these stars inside and background galaxies shining through it, because these longer wavelengths can go around the dust that otherwise would be opaque and black, and it really gives us some pretty great detail. Let's go back to this spot. Some great detail on the edges. For example, one of the things that go back to this plot, if you look inside here, let's drill down into this spot. Like there's this nodule here. Up and slightly to the right is a very, very bright star out of the field of view, and the radiation pressure from it is causing the dust to be blown back. Right, so you've got a very hot, bright star in the Carina Nebula that the light pressure is pushing against the gas clouds. But in this spot here, there's a nodule where it has some gravitational mass, and we see inside a star system, a planetary solar system being formed. It has enough gravity to resist the radiation pressure for that set. You can also see a nodule here of something being formed. Little solar systems being formed along the edge of these sort of nodules, but again, from optical point of view, it just should be opaque. But we can see inside these clouds and see incredible detail what's happening down inside the structure. Here's another proto star. This star here is at very early stages. Its solar system is forming, and it has enough gravitational thing to resist the radiation pressure. And so you see it as sort of this lump.
A lot of that would be obscured in the visible range, though, right?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, very, very obscured and invisible. And again, when you go to something even narrower frequency range, you can see some
That's just
really
incredible.
great detail inside here. Plus the fact that you're seeing behind it, background galaxies, but all these are inside are these yellow things are stars that are being formed inside the edge of this.
This is literally a stellar nursery.
Yes, exactly. And we can see inside the nursery, which otherwise would be opaque because the dust would obscure it.
And this is kind of where how our sun came into being at some time billions of years ago.
One of these, this is some sort of open cluster that eventually the radiation pressure will strip it out, and you'll get a nice little PV type block there. This is a star in front of it, but again, the details of the stellar nursery is quite incredible.
What's that in the middle there?
Stars
like to your left, like right, almost dead center. Go up.
Almost dead center. This
What's that? Is that a galaxy or something?
So this is a star that has. I think again, this is a star with where you've got some radiation pressure from a star that's off to the right that's pushing on it as well. So it's resisting. It's got a gas stripping off of it. So again, it's a young star that's emerging from its cocoon.
What would it like to be in that area? Obviously this is all gone by now. It doesn't exist because it's light years away. How old is this right here?
I mean, this particular thing, I think Carina Nebula. I'm trying to remember if isn't it something like on the order of I want to say 5,000 light years.
Okay.
Away, but I could be wrong on that.
8,500. So it's not like it's not like an extremely distant time period. So it's still be there. I was thinking it's like millions of years. So it's not. It's only 8,500. So it's still a nursery. What would it be like to be actually inside of that? Much closer, like almost next to inside that cluster, that star cluster, the open star cluster.
I think one of the things, if you were inside there, optically, you would not know most of the universe existed because you'd have this sort of glowing cloud. You'd have some light coming from vague direction inside, but you would be inside this very opaque cocoon, and you would have very little knowledge about the rest of the visible universe, right? If you're inside one of these. Pretty much inside these lumps, right? Mm-hmm. But once that solar system forms, and the gas condenses into planets, and the rest of the gas is sort of stripped away, then you'll be able to see out into space. And then of course
opacity goes away after a while.
Yeah. And so this is probably a process that lasts maybe in the 50 to 100,000 year time period. Before it gets sort of stripped away.
I say we got about 3 more slides. If we could, I know we got to wrap this up in less than 20 minutes. So
let me go give a couple of things like Stephan's quintet. This is a set of 5 galaxies. This one on the side is actually just has to be in alignment, but you have 1, 2, 3, 4 galaxies that are gravitationally bound, and this particular galaxy itself up here actually has a massive black hole. And we can see the effect of the region of that black hole system. So here we see the general optical set, the broad wavelength here. But when you start doing some selective frequencies, you begin to see down inside the galaxies itself, where you can see the region where there's a black hole and the radiation coming from the jets that are causing a lot of stuff there. We can see these two core galaxies interacting, generating stellar nursery. We can see this galaxy down here is relatively quiet and not extremely visible. And what you do with this stuff is you can look at, for example, remember this is where the black hole is, and you can look at the region, the black hole, for instance, just off to the side, and you can then begin to look at the spectrum. And you can begin to see things like the notion of the speed and the energy from 2 spots that otherwise would just look blinding, right? In optical wise, it's just there, but we can go into a spot and look at these very tiny spots nearby, and given the motion of these things and the spectral shift, we can get an idea of the velocity and see the gas in its swirling process around this massive black hole. We can in these spots here look at stuff like molecular hydrogen that's formed actually H2, cold enough to bind together to form molecular hydrogen, and other ions, again from very, very detailed spectroscopy. Here's a case of a planetary nebula where this star here ejected envelope, and we see it rushing out. Normally it's too bright, but actually what happens is there's a massive giant star, that's the bright spot, and there's a compact white dwarf that the material from the massive star piled down onto, and then it exploded and ejected out into space. And we can see the originator of the white dwarf and the gas giant that's feeding it. Eventually, that gas giant will pile up to the point where it'll do a Type Ia supernova and just take the whole thing out. But again, we can see again in great detail, again given the frequencies of stuff. And finally, if you look at something like, for example, in details of like a deep image, right? This is a deep image where we're seeing gravitational lensing. There's the sort of the widest galaxies are a cluster in front, and light from behind are being gradually bent, and you see these arcs. These are arcs of light that's being bent around those galaxies that are much, much fainter. And we can look at some of these galaxies that are being lensed, and we're seeing galaxies where light, for example, like this particular faint dot over here, this very, very faint red dot over here, light has traveled 13.1 billion years to reach us. Right? This is the galaxy, and you can see here's the hydrogen oxygen redshifted. We can see the redshift from these very deep things that are way in the infrared that are so redshifted back when the universe, at this particular light left this galaxy when the universe was only about 600 million years old.
Now, do they have individual teams work? I mean, like every speck on here is a pretty much a galaxy. Okay, so I mean,
yes,
do they have these have obviously hundreds of millions of stars and things of that nature. So do they have an individual team looking at each single object in there and then analyzing that? I mean, because there's got to be a lot of work that goes into this.
That deep field is going to take years of analysis of stuff. People keep finding amazing stuff within this cluster.
There's still a lot of processing going on because there's just so much information to go through, I would imagine.
Yes, so this deep field stuff of some of these very faint red stuff, and we're seeing galaxies. When you look at narrow slices, we're seeing galaxies that are surprisingly well formed, relatively soon after the beginning of the Big Bang event, which is again quite incredible. Probably the best thing, however, is this image. Right? It doesn't look pretty, but what we're seeing is a spectra of a planet around a star that's 1,150 light years. So that's 1,150 times 10 trillion kilometers away. And we're seeing the spectra of the atmosphere of the planet around the star. And we're seeing here like water vapor that's in the planet's atmosphere. And we're also, I can tell you that there's some carbon stuff and there's some nitrogen stuff here and compounds that's rich. There's a rich chemistry going on inside this. Unfortunately, this star, the planet is quite close to the star, and it's quite hot. So I wouldn't expect. I mean, the temperature we're seeing around 1,000 Kelvin or more. But the fact that we're seeing spectra of the atmosphere of a planet next to a star that's over 1,150 light years away.
Would they be able to do this to Alpha Proxima B?
Yeah, and so there's stuff where they've got known stars. They've been able, Webb has now been able to directly image a exoplanet where they knew it was aside from the star and able to directly image they can see the disk, the planet.
They could get it.
Yeah, they not the disk, but they can see the light from the planet.
Yeah,
and then they can feed it to the spectrograph and begin to look at what's inside. What the conditions on.
So they basically got enough light where they can do a spectral analysis of it.
Yes, and so that's the thing, and we're seeing, we're seeing light, very very faint signature, but detailed spectra of stuff. So we're going to try and as a planetary scientist, being able to look at the composition of atmospheres of planets around other stars is quite extraordinary. Let alone Jupiter. I mean, Jupiter is going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to there's some shots of the dwarf planet Pluto to see how its atmosphere is going. It's amazing that the telescope works. They're getting extraordinary data off of this thing on its first run, and I am really grateful that they took the diligent care to make sure that when this telescope launched, it worked, and it is working extremely well. And so the science data pouring off of it, again, that graph might not be exciting, but tell me, most of astronomical science data is not pretty. It is detailed. And so if you're looking for the search for extraterrestrial life or habitable planets or planets where interesting chemistry is going, one of the first things that you want to see is how big is the planet, what's its temperature, and what's the composition of its atmosphere. Does it have an atmosphere? That sort of thing. This is we're going to be able to get this stuff with this extraordinary instrument.
Yeah,
Any questions?
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. They'll wrap it up with some Q&A. I do think they're going to be analyzing that data for a very, very, very long time.
Very long time. And this is going to work for a long time as well. So thank you, NASA.
So it's a little unrelated, but not much. But somebody wants to know, when black holes eat, do they grow?
Yes, when mass crosses the event horizon, the mass change of black hole changes, its spin changes, and its charge changes. Those are three things you can detect the effect of outside of the zone, right? The event horizon is the point of no return, but outside the point of no return, you can measure the effect of mass. So when you add more mass, it gets more massive. If you add more charge, you get more charge. And if the mass coming in causes a thing to spin up, you can detect the change of spin.
No hair theorem.
Yeah.
And is there any actually black holes that don't have any spin? I can imagine. How would a black hole not have any spin? It seems like all of them would have to have some kind of angular momentum. All of them clearly have mass.
I would think so. I would suspect so. I mean, you could argue that you could get two colliding black holes that happen to kind of rotate and kind of end up with a Venus-like thing, like Venus. Its rotation is very, very, very slow.
Yeah, but that's been slowed down. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so imagine a black hole getting hit by another black hole, and the effect slows down. So it's kind of a slow thing because it happens to hit just right. But most black holes spin. In fact, some black holes spin at a pretty good rate. I mean, to the point where a non-trivial fraction of the speed of light.
Yeah, relativistic speeds. I mean,
yes.
I mean, I think a non-rotating, non-charged mass black hole is called a Schwarzschild black hole, which is basically so that
it's simplified. It exists for the mathematics, so you can begin to try and then
you go to the curve and
understand
stuff.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Other questions?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, this. I see. I love talking about this stuff. I do. I think it's nice. Go ahead.
I mean, keep an eye on stuff coming over the web. Not only just the beautiful data, but some of the some of the results that we're learning from there. The James Webb is going to, if it does its job, it's going to generate a whole pile of questions. Because again, science is about questions. Dogma gives you answers or tells you answers, but science values questions. And the valuable thing that the web's going to do is, what in the heck is that? How did Bob, like, I didn't realize that galaxies could form that fast after the initial moments of the Big Bang, right? 600 million years, is unusually fast thing. So that tells me that I should be asking more questions about how galaxies form, or at least early galaxies form. But again, there's more data coming.
I have one last question for you then, because I've seen flippers pull this. James Webb Telescope has disproven the Big Bang Theory.
No, it has actually. It actually has enhanced our understanding of the Big Bang process. Remember, Big Bang is a process, right? We're currently in the Big Bang, right? It's
ongoing,
what the universe is doing, and it has shown data that is incredibly confirmatory of the Big Bang process. So in fact, it's enhanced it, not the other way around.
Yep.
So yeah, it's actually now, yes, it surprised us because again, we don't know the answers, and in fact, we get excited when we don't understand something because we can learn. We don't just start with a priori assumption. We can learn from that, and so having these early galaxies, understanding it, but also learning about chemistry around other planets, around other stars, is going to give us some pretty interesting things beyond just the planets we have in our solar system, and I hope it will give us some potentially certainly some of the targets are some of the quote potentially habitable planets to try to get understanding about, is there some really interesting chemistry going on? If there are some long carbon chain compounds, the Webb will begin to see the infrared from that, and we might again get some really interesting, not a picture of ET, but
yeah, well, I mean,
but a atmosphere with interesting stuff happening.
I still think that we might be on the verge one day of discovering alien life. I know just recently we found organic compounds on Mars. Like the last couple of days has been a huge finding. They did an analysis. Now that doesn't mean there's life, but there's certainly a precursor. If life does exist, we'd expect probably to be organically based, carbon-based life forms, because that's the only way we know life can exist at the moment. And so, and even if there's some kind of panspermia from Earth to Mars, even if it's from Earth or whatever, the fact that they found organic compounds is pretty cool. So I think that one of these days we're going to have to be able to just figure out, hey, are we alone in the universe or not? Because I think that's one of those. Next to the question that God exists, I think that's the most unanswered question in humanity.
Example. So finding a rocky planet whose temperatures are in the 250 to 300 Kelvin, so chemistry can be interesting, and the composition of the atmosphere has water, a nice solvent, it's got nitrogen, it's got carbon, it's got oxygen, those sorts of things, and then starting to form interesting molecules. That's going to be quite intriguing for again looking at something where life may be active. And again, you're not going to get that by Earth Bay tells, going to get that by something like the Webb. So go Webb. Thank you again for all those engineers there. So so what do you have shows coming up that you want to?
I have some stuff that I've been working on. I'm going to be probably doing Non Sequitur on Fridays. I'm taking every Friday off, I think, in perpetuity, so to speak. I haven't officially made it happen, but I've ran it through basically the chain of command, so to speak, and they're like, yeah, we got no problem with that. So I just have to put it in the computer, so when they do scheduling, I just have Fridays off. So I'll probably be doing Non-Sequitur Show every Friday. Might be some like spurious shows here and there. But I do got some things I lined up. I got one thing I'm working on from a carryover that I did on Nikki's channel, Nikki 38, dealing with QAnon and Cicada 3301 that I find fascinating. And even though when I was on her channel, I said, look, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole any further because there's just such a massive amount of detail. Just recently, I had somebody connect with me that has piqued my interest even more so. And so I might dive into that just a little bit more, not exceptionally, but just like the puzzle itself, if you people are familiar with Cicada 3301. So I might be working on something like that. I don't think I'll have it ready by next Friday, but like I said, what I've been trying to do is I have all these ideas for these shows, but I've kind of been moving them around based upon my availability and guests because my schedule has been changing. So now that I probably will have every Friday off for sure. Like this one was later than normal, right? This one was 8 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock Pacific. And then I've got some philosophy stuff coming up on my channel, on Steve McRae channel. I've also got some call-in stuff I'll be doing on the Great Debate Community channel. So yeah, I've got things planned. It's just making them happen because we've been busy lately, man. There's been a lot of stuff going on.
And likewise, I have a show where I've been every so often doing a show on what's currently happening with the eruption of Kilauea. And we get sort of monthly sort of thing. So the next one actually is going to be on October 28th, and we're going to look at what's happened between the show we did this morning and there look at again how Kilauea is going in, and we're looking at the telemetry. We're showing live pictures. from some of the cameras we set up there, looking at tilt meters, all that set, and helping people looking at you're looking at the volcano on a periodic basis to get an idea about the rhythm of what's happening, as well as trying to guess what the volcano is going to do next.
When's the next time you're going to go on the
so,
solar thing? Next time you're going to do one of the solar transits?
Well, my next solar expedition is the 2023 eclipse off of the coast of Australia.
And you're going to that one?
In April, yeah, in April 2023, going into Darwin, and then we'll take a ship out to intercept the shadow, and then we're going to go up into Indonesia to check out some volcanoes, and then come back to Darwin. Then I'm going to take the train from the top of Australia to the bottom, Darwin to Adelaide. And then they're going to fly into Queensland and spend about 2 weeks with a guy named Red Eye.
That guy. Red Eye. Yeah, I remember Red Eye. How's he doing?
Yeah, he is always interesting. He's got an amazing garden he's building
awesome.
there, and so forth. But again, he's a real Australian, allegedly.
Oh, he's the real deal. He's the real deal.
And we're going to go out. We're going to go out into the outback stuff, because I need somebody who actually knows what they're doing to not to make sure I don't.
I want you to get some footage of Red Eye hanging on for dear life as he's hanging on upside down in the outback.
Yes,
just to prove the Earth is flat. There you go.
Yeah. So the next time I do the Kilauea show, it's on a place called Debate Hub. I'm the one doing the talking, not the hosts. It's on October 28th at 1 p.m. Pacific, and again we'll do another run of the rate of how much the Kilo volcano has been doing, and flows and maps and so forth. It's quite detailed stuff. So if you want to check out what's happening there, come join me on my birthday on that time. Meanwhile, best wishes on your channel.
Thank you, and always a pleasure, my friend. You're my probably all-time favorite guest, because you can just talk about so many different topics. And just the fact that you give up your time so willingly to talk about these things. People need to probably take advantage of that and listen, because you always add something of interest and something novel to discussion, because you've intricately been involved in a lot of this stuff. Not necessarily the James Webb. I don't know what you did with that, but if anything. But I know in other projects you have.
I don't have any direct involvement with it, the web itself, other than advocating for it. The thing about an Artemis is I'm trying to we have a line for Launch 7 where they've been developing the moon base, where we'll put a telescope on the surface of the moon that can be serviced. That again is going to be able to do some incredible stuff in the on a stable platform with effectively no atmosphere.
Well, they need to name that the Landon, Curt, Noll moon base telescope. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
We're hopeful for that. So hopeful for that, because again, we live in such a credible universe, and I'm so fortunate to be able to explore my favorite universe, and I'm happy to share it with you.
I love it.
Again, come check out Debate Hub, October 28th, 1 p.m. Pacific, 13. See what Kilauea is doing.
Awesome, guys. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank my viewers. I'm going to shill a couple things real quick, if I can, myself. For those who don't know, there's a awards ceremony going on. It's called the Grifties. I just put it in the live chat. James and I are having a lively debate, so to speak. Not really. But, he wants to vote for Chile, which I think Chile is deserving. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say otherwise. Chile de Castro is absolutely deserving of winning the Grifties. Him and Nick Rakita are like 1, 2, and 3. However, the number one spot is clearly for Without a Crystal Ball. So if you would like to join us in voting every hour on the hour for the next 3 months, which most of us are doing, every free time we get, we're voting. The number one spot right now is Without a Crystal Ball. Please go vote for her. She is deserving of this award. We would like to see her win it. The people that are involved in the award already know about her. They already got some information where if she wins it, they'll be able to give the presentation. It is a big award ceremony, very similar to what we had on here. If you guys remember, way back when we did the what was the awards called? I don't remember so long. We had an awards ceremony, right? What were they called? It was the oh my goodness, what was our awards ceremony that we did? It was like one year.
Yeah.
That was called the.
It was but the crazies, right?
But I forget what the hell we called it. It was, whatever. But it's something very similar to that. Maybe we should do another awards ceremony. Maybe I should. I
understand on that poll that you're actually on the.
I'm number 40. Yes, I'm very proud. Here's what's happened, dude. I was offended. I really was offended. I was like, what, am I not good enough for this? Nobody wanted to spend $4 to vote for me, to put me on, get even nominated. It cost like $3.95. And now I'm like number 40. And it's funny because I already told like I said, I know been talking to the people that doing this stuff, and this is like, yes, I like to get in the top 10 would be nice, but don't waste your votes. But definitely vote for number 1. I think that there's no way that it can't be Chile or Without a Crystal Ball, because people are just voting because they just hate them so much, both of them. So
yeah, but that
the Golden Nuns, yes, the Golden Nuns. How did I forget the Golden Nuns?
And I think you can vote like once an hour or so forth.
Yeah,
and you can vote early and vote often. There's some fun stuff there. Don't take it seriously.
It's all
but enjoy.
Well, with her, I do, because my history with her, and I do think she's a horrible human being. So it is personal, but the other people, it's all for fun. Everybody else names on the list it's just hilarious. They've got like Justin Trudeau on there. They've got the Umbrella guy. They've got it's just a lot of people. But anyways, go vote in the Grifties. Also, like I said, I have my fundraiser, which is pinned to the live chat. It's actually in the video description. Anybody who donates that leaves a message, especially dealing with trolls, I would read out every, the next time I stream and next time I do an episode. But it really right now is that the people who tried to shut down this fundraiser, trying to say it was fraudulent. It is not. I have all the receipts. It is all 100% legit. And so just to spit in their face, if you want to say, hey, F you trolls, here's a buck. Knock yourself out. I literally have not made a dime on this. I mean, I've gotten about 4,400 in. I've spent 10,000. So I'm $5,000 in the hole, plus $5,000 for this show. $10,000 I'm in the red, but I'm number 440 for grifter. How does that work? I'm like the world's worst grifter. I mean, I've spent $10,000 and yet I'm number 40.
Yeah, well, go there and vote for Steve if you see someone else even more deserving. I understand you can basically vote for multiple people. It's not
you get 10 votes. You get 10 votes. Yeah, you get 10 votes.
Each hour. So have fun and don't take it seriously. But again, I would encourage you to continue to explore this amazing universe, and keep watching what's happening with web. Keep attuned to science, new stuff. We'll come back sometime, Steve, and we'll talk about some other science stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in science that's nothing to do with drama, nothing to do with politics, but it's amazing sort of stuff that's happening.
Would you think we should do another Golden Nun? Those were fun.
That was fun, right? But also,
how about the world's worst science communicator, the biggest Poe flurfer? Some cool categories like that.
But also, then to have something like at the end of the year, a couple of your science friends get together and sort of talk about what's the most amazing science thing that happened that year.
I could put together a science panel. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of the best. What was the most surprising thing? What was the most amazing thing that was done? What was that sort of the best of science for that year? And see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that.
Discoveries, unexpected stuff, questions, that sort of thing.
All right, so that sounds good. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to end the call and end the stream. So, Landon, once again, thank you very much. As always, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Back to the NonSequitur Show. It's been a while.
Again, be sure to check out on my birthday, October 28th, at 1 p.m. Pacific, Debate Hub. See what's happening with Kilauea.
Will do. All right, I'm going to go because I've been sitting here. I gotta go use the restroom. All right, guys. Good night.
Have a good one.
See you then. Bye bye. Yeah.
Ciao.